All right, surprise. Welcome in to an emergency live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. It is Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth, because we got a couple trades to go over very quickly that comes in late Tuesday night here, a week from the NFL trade deadline. Mike Vrabel and co. Getting busy, and Barth will get right into it. We'll go kind of chronological order here in these trades.
Well, let me just say first, you want another sign that the Patriots are back? We're doing an emergency Patriots Beat podcast. We haven't done one. Did we do one when Diggs signed?
I think we did. I think we all jumped on with Mike and Taylor when Diggs signed.
If before then, the last one might have been with Evan. I don't know that I ever did one with Mike or Ryan. So me and Evan used to do these all the time in the early days of the podcast. You guys might remember those. This used to be a staple of this podcast. We haven't had a ton of reasons to do them in recent years, but this it feels like the good old days a little bit, like emergency pod. They're giving us Tuesday night news. This is great.
I feel like we might have done one. We definitely did one with Diggs. I feel like we might have done one last year when they named Drake the starter. Like that randomly came out on a Tuesday.
I think so. Yeah, you might be right.
Like we might have jumped on for that, but between that, it hasn't been much.
They used to be a lot more regular. So this is hopefully we get. And it wasn't even one of these things where like we got off the air and they did it 5 minutes later.
Exactly. We were here waiting. Perfect timing. Bruins are an intermission. They actually just had a good period, too. They scored some goals, didn't give up any goals. So perfect time to jump on here and talk about a couple trades here. And again, we'll start chronologically, and that was with Keion White going to the San Francisco 49ers. It was Keion White and a 7th-round pick, and the Patriots get a 6th-round pick back. So a pick swap there. Barth, we talked about this yesterday on our breakdown show of the Browns game. This felt like this one was coming after Keion White was a healthy inactive for that one, but officially his tenure in New England is over. Again, Keion White in a 7th to the San Francisco 49ers, and the Patriots get a 6th-rounder back there.
Yeah, the writing was on the wall when he was inactive, like you mentioned. I'm a little surprised at the return. I was kind of hoping that both of these guys would maybe be, you could use in a player for player swap, maybe player and a pick or something like that, right? But his time was just out. It seemed like his aggressive nature is going to fit well in this defense, but Keion White played better than him in training camp. Then Anthony Jennings got going. He's probably at his best in the interior anyway, but obviously between Barmore, Milton Williams, and Khyiris Tonga, there's no room there. So a guy that I still think has talent. I don't think we've heard the last of Keion White in this league, but there was no path for him to play here. And 49ers, they have a lot of needs up front, so they'll get a chance to continue to work on his development. It also doesn't help that he was an older draft pick, so he doesn't have the kind of, development runway. He's older. I think we talked about this, Brian, at one point a couple of weeks ago. He's older than Keion Chason.
Yep. I was literally just grabbing the roster to look at their.
I do wonder if, the Niners maybe see this as he can be their Keion Chason, their guy that was a high draft pick that didn't pan out, lost a role, and now they can try to, reset with him.
Yeah, he's 6 months older than Keion Chason, who has kind of, reborn his career here on a couple stops. So maybe the Niners see that similar with Keion. But yeah, we saw the flashes, especially on the interior. That seemed like where he was kind of at his best. But you mentioned those names they got. Even guys like Joshua Farmer and Corey Durden, who they signed, after training camp, have shown up in flashes. Like you have
Durden played well in against the Browns.
He played well. Like it feels like every game he makes 1 or 2 plays, and he's got a ton of energy out there. And then Cleveland was definitely his best game of the year. So there could have been the argument like, okay, maybe keep Keion White in case Christian Barmore goes down or Milton Williams go down, and then you have that interior pass rusher there that you could plug in. But they have really good depth, and all those guys are playing really well, and they're younger. They're younger players. So it hasn't worked on the edge. So you get some value there and move off, get what you can get for Keion White. It is disappointing, I would say, because it did look kind of promising early on under Vrabel that it was going to work out on the edge, but just has not at all. He recorded 3 pressures this year. They all came in the Panthers game, which was a very beat up offensive line. So he's not been good pass rushing on the edge. He's never really been a great kind of run defender. Just never really clicked for him. So ship him off to San Francisco and get that draft pick back. But now I would.
Meanwhile, the Niners suddenly Patriots West, Mac Jones, Kendrick Bourne, Keion White. They've also got William Bradley King on their practice squad. Like they're tapping into those early 2000s Patriots teams.
Absolutely, but I think we said edge would already be a position of maybe need here going into the week, and now with Keion, definitely this feels like edge could be a position they target until next Tuesday when the deadline is coming up.
So at the very least, it's a depth need. Like you need another body there, right? Another guy in the rotation. Anthony Jennings has stepped up as that third guy, but you probably want 4 rotating through there. So the question is does this mean a bigger role for Elijah Ponder? They did just add Caleb Murphy off of waivers. They still have Braden Swinson on their practice squad. Like, is this a chance to play the kids and see what you have in them? Or do they want to try to bolster and upgrade that rotation? And maybe that doesn't mean a starter like a Trey Hendrickson, but Albert Breer reported last week that they're going to kind of take a long-term approach to this. And guys that even if they're on expiring contracts, you'd think younger players who they can re-sign and continue to work with, maybe try to replicate what they did with Caleb Von Chason, get a young pass rusher in here who was kind of in a Keion White situation, didn't have a role. So, some of the names that I've seen thrown out in different reports are, guys like Arnold Ebiketie, Azeez Ojulari, Boye Mafe. That's probably higher end. I was a little surprised to see some people say that he could be traded. Seattle's rolling. He's a solid player, but if you can add a guy like that, and now he's your third or fourth pass rusher with Jennings, maybe a game plan situational sort of player. And then, but a lot of those guys, Arden Key's a little older. He's 29. Most of those guys are in their mid 20s, but you add a guy like that who's going to play situationally. And then maybe you work with moving forward and try to develop moving forward. I could see that making sense. Again, they have to add somebody, but it could be as simple as, all right, Elijah Ponder's in the rotation, we're adding Braden Swinson to the roster and going from there. It's not upgrading the rotation. It's just filling the spot. That's the question, is how aggressive will they be with that?
They also lost Truman Jones on the practice squad, who played the edge, right? The Titans signed him to their active roster. So, again, he was on the practice squad, but still another layer of depth, right? You lose 2 edge guys, a position that you're already pretty weak in. So you would imagine they add something somewhere. I know Kayvon Thibodeau's name has been thrown out there. It doesn't sound like he's going to leave the Giants. I don't know if that would be a move if they want to get really aggressive. Maybe I like Jalen Phillips, too, of Miami. That's kind of difficult in division.
We do another emergency podcast for a guy like that. Like that's a spot.
Yeah. That's more of the splash department. And I think there was a report earlier today that he's probably not going to move on. They have his 5th-year option, and he's going to stay in New York. But they do need some layer of depth there on the edge. And we'll talk about all these picks that they have collected. They can make these moves. But the second trade that then followed Keion White was Kyle Duggar. This one feels like it's been brewing since the summer, right? We talked a lot about his fit in this new Mike Vrabel scheme on the back end there this summer, when he was playing deep into preseason games. Now, he went on to kind of have a role in the regular season as this third safety. He's played pretty well, I thought, the last 2 games before the Browns game with Jalen Hawkins out. I think he was right around 40% of defensive snaps, played a role on special teams, but they ultimately move off and send him to Pittsburgh. He reunites with Jabril Peppers there in their secondary for this same pick swap. Kyle Duggar in a 7th to the Steelers, Barth, for a 6th-round pick getting back.
Yeah, this one felt, we knew this was a long time coming. Ironically, he ends up back with Jabril Peppers in Pittsburgh, and Peppers was the guy that was cut when we thought it was going to be Duggar that was moving on. He just wasn't right with that injury. He still wasn't right, and he wasn't playing a ton here. Clearly wanted to play. That one felt more inevitable. The return feels more accurate when you talk about the contract. I think I saw Mike Giardi reported they're going to eat some of that money this year. This year's whatever. They get out from under that contract long term, which is important. And like we just talked about, like safety's in need now. Jalen Hawkins played great on Sunday, but he's been dealing with a hamstring. Those are tricky. Craig Woodson's been a little banged up. He's a rookie. And then it's Del Pettis, who's more of a depth player, and then it's Brendan Schooler. So is it Richie Grant, who does have starting experience, but it's been a few years? I don't know, who's available for safeties that would be an upgrade to the rotation that aren't like starting caliber players. I haven't seen many. Maybe they use that spot another linebacker just to try to get a tight end coverage guy, somebody like a Logan Wilson. But Yeah, it was clear Duggar didn't have a role on this team, and they couldn't deal him at the start of the season, but they found an opportunity to get out from under the contract, and they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So they get some extra space going forward the next 2 years. But it just, even though I thought he was like playing better the last few weeks, he just never, I don't think, was going to get back to that explosive level of player he was in, 2022, 2023, when he was forcing all these turnovers and was around the football so much. I really do think that ankle injury really, really hindered him there. So just again, wasn't a great scheme fit, but that is a position of need now because they clearly like what they have in Jalen Hawkins and Craig Woodson, but both of those guys have missed games or been on the injury report. So I would imagine, and they do seem to like Del Pettis in that rotation as well, but is he going to be 40% of the defensive snaps in that area? Like it does feel like they'll go out and get a safety here at some point. But lots of picks now, Barth. We could have a ton of fun in mock draft season with force. They have 10 picks in this draft, 4 in the 6th round. They also have an additional 4th round pick from draft day trade last year when they traded back in the 3rd round, got Jared Wilson. So ton of disposal. What are you kind of comfortable shedding out here, dealing, if you could, be in charge of this capital? Obviously, you can move some of those 6th round picks. You don't need 4,
right?
But what were you kind of comfortable shelling out here, depending on what type of player you bring back?
I think it. I mean, it obviously depends on the player. If this is the market for those sorts of players, do they end up on the other side of a 6-7 pick swap, something like that? Do they give up a 6? Yep, there it is. Good job. There's big night for the 6-7 pick swap.
We had to work 6-7 at one time. There were 2.
Oh, I saw it in my replies. Yeah, the 2 6-7 pick swap, which is like the least trade you can make, 6-7. But I wouldn't hate if you can get, even if it's like 6-5. Some of those guys that I rattled off earlier, those edge guys, they still need a running back. So that's the thing. They essentially now have 3 spots. They don't have enough depth, and they only have 2 roster spots. So there's going to be some juggling there. Again, is that they don't address safety, and it's Richie Grant getting elevated from the practice squad for a few weeks, and they readjust, or somebody getting elevated at edge, Braden Swinson. I wouldn't hate them, adding a couple players here in pick swap deals, even if they're, rotational players. The other need, I wrote about this on 985sportshub.com today. Some of you guys might think this is nuts. I felt a little ridiculous writing it, but then I did some more research and I'm standing by it. I want them to trade for kick returner. And if it's a 6, it probably doesn't need to be any more than a 6-7 pick swap. But they are averaging 23.8 yards per return since Antonio Gibson got hurt. That paces out for 28th, 29th in the league. And the gap between the best teams and the worst teams in kick returns is about 10 yards per return. So you return 3 or 4 kicks a game, you're talking about 40 to 50 yards of field position over the course of a game. Travion Henderson was better when he did it last week, but they had talked about in the past, like if he's going to play a sizable role on offense, they don't want him returning kicks. They don't want to risk him like that, which is understandable. And after the way he played on Sunday, you'd hope he's playing a bigger role. Efton Chisholm's not going to cut it. And they clearly don't feel comfortable with Kyle Williams doing it because he hasn't gotten a shot. So the other thing in that, there are 8 teams right now that are over 500 in the AFC. 6 of those 8 have a returner that ranks in the top half of the league in terms of kick return average. And one of the teams that doesn't is the Chargers. They don't have any returners that rank because they rotate the guys so much that none of them qualify for the leaderboard. So other teams are going to have that advantage when you play them, like the potential playoff teams. I would really like the Patriots to have it as well. There are some returners at the top of the board that are on losing teams. Dwayne Eskridge in Miami would be one. Dylan Laube, who we talked about a lot in the draft a couple years ago with the Raiders. You want to get really nuts? You know who's a top 5 returner in the league and is on a losing team that could probably be had? Gunnar Olszewski is averaging almost 30 yards a return. I mean, now people would lose their mind about, they're burying Efton Chisholm. I don't need him playing a snapper receiver. But you bring a guy like him in, or Dylan Laube in, or Dwayne Eskridge in, or there's another one, Greg Dortchin to return. He's been really good this year on kickoff returns. I would absolutely 6-7 pick swap to get one of those guys to boost the return units. You don't have to worry about Travion Henderson there. I think that would have a bigger impact than maybe people would initially realize.
I don't know. Could they do it though at receiver and like make him active on game days? Because that would be the tough part
Isn't that? But isn't that just Matthew Slater? I know it's a new coaching staff, but I mean, there were times where the Patriots had 6 receivers active on game day because of Slater.
Well, not even like just the 6 receivers, because like they had Chisholm active as 7, right? But they just couldn't do that the rest of the roster. Like they needed
6.
Was he 6?
Yeah, because they only have 6 receivers.
Okay.
Booty, Diggs, Hollins, Pop, Williams, Chisholm.
Booty, Diggs, Hollins, Pop. Is that 6? I can't count.
With Chisholm, yeah. I'm just going to pull up the roster. It is 9:00 at night here. Let's make sure.
I don't know why that's.
I mean,
someone sent us $10, Mike. Thank you to tell us to get a coffee, no question. And you can see what happens at 9:15.
I mean, like, yeah, in theory, they could be like, it's 7 wide receivers. It's too much. The thing is, like, I want them to add a kick returner. That's where this take started. The majority of the top kick returners in the league are receivers right now. That's the reality of it. A handful of running backs. I think there were 2 corners. That's it. It's really not something defensive players do anymore. So, I mean, ideally, you check 2 boxes with one. You go out, you trade for a guy like Jerome Ford, who can be your third running back and be your kick returner, just like Antonio Gibson was, and you're off and running. You know, Laube is a running back. He hasn't played a ton of offense. He really didn't play any offense as a rookie. He's done a little more this year. So that, you know, how do they feel about him as a running back? But if, you know, the best kick returners are our receivers. So if they wanted to get aggressive in that regard, yeah, you'd have to have 6 or 7 receivers active on game day if you were going to have Chisholm active.
They do have 6. Chisholm is the 6th. So interesting, they are the best receiver. The kick returners are the best receivers because the Patriots tend to lean towards that bigger body running back, which is kind of contrary to that. But when you have the explosive Gibson and Henderson, you can do that. But yeah, I would be in favor of that because, you know, I think Chisholm is good in that role in terms of decision making, but he's not. We knew he wasn't fast. Like he runs.
They need explosiveness.
We know
can't, again, it's
player. So
you're talking 10 yards of field position per return. How many returns are you having in a game? So the top, it's actually more evenly split than I thought. So the top returners are Drake Young in Seattle, Luke McCaffrey, maybe? No, because Luke McCaffrey plays enough receiver for them that they're not going to deal him.
Yeah.
Isaiah Davis from the Jets. You know, if the Jets aren't going to trade Breece Hall in the division, would they trade their backup running back? Will Shipley, Antonio Gibson still technically 5th, Gunnar Olszewski, Marvin Mims, Dylan Laube, Greg Dortch, Xavier Gibson. Those are the top 10 kick returners in the league. Again, the Patriots have been at 23.8 yards per return. The league average is 25.5. All those guys are at 27. So you're talking about not insignificant yardage, like over the course of a game and over the course of a season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Vrabel's talked so much this year, even dating back to, you know, the preseason when Henderson had that big return. Like they want that play to be a weapon for them and be a you know, kind of game-changing play, and they haven't got that since Gibson went down. So that's definitely a position that they might be looking at there at the kick returner, but we'll probably come back with some more names and exact names and positions later this week, but we wanted to just get on and talk about Keion and Duggar getting shipped out. We also have one more piece of news that came out for the Patriots on Tuesday, and that was a contract extension. But very quickly, before we get into that extension, we also have to talk about Prize Picks. Our great friends, and Barth, you and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right and simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player staff projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. We'll, of course, have our Patriots lineup ready to go on Sunday for you guys against the Falcons. Tons of other football you guys can extend to. Also, we have all sports going on. Hockey, World Series, basketball is in full force. Great World Series 18-inning game last night. Hope everyone just bet or more Shohei everything on that one. So tons of options in Prize Picks. So make sure you guys download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups. After you play your first $5 lineup, that's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup over on Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. I have to talk to you guys about a new sponsor. Something else. All right. Last piece of news, Barth. Marcus Jones, 3-year contract extension signed today. worth $36 million, upside to 40.5, makes him the third highest paid slot corner in the NFL. Very well deserved, good piece of business, I would say, getting this done before he hits the open market. And Marcus Jones now locked in as the last member of that 2022 draft class, and you keep him in for 3 more years.
It's funny, like today, a lot of the takes tonight and tomorrow are going to be about Vrabel cleaning house and Vrabel moving on from the guys that aren't his, with Keion White and Kyle Duggar and who's next. And Marcus Jones was a guy that was in that conversation in camp. Does he fit? Does the coaching staff like him? What's his role going to be? Is he going to have a role? And I think he is an example of really why this has worked so quickly for Vrabel's staff here in New England, because the role he's in now probably was not a perfect fit for him back in July. I also don't think it existed in the defense back in July. I think it's a really good example of the two sides meeting each other halfway, and Jones playing a little bit out of his comfort zone and getting better at some things, and then the coaching staff tweaking what that slot corner role is traditionally for them a little bit to play a little more to Jones' strengths. And look what's happened. You have a guy that's having an unbelievable season. He's been one of the best slot corners in football. Obviously, there's the punt return element as well. Named it team captain. Glad to see him get the contract. Keeps him here through his age 30 season. And he just, like you said, I think it's just good business. He's a good player. It's not a backbreaking contract by any means. It's right in line with comparable players around the league. They didn't reset the market or anything like that. And good for him, a guy that's been injured, but is been able to stay healthy this year and really thrive in what is kind of a new role.
Yes, we were talking, Taylor and a couple of us down at Gillette Monday, and we were wondering like if they would do this now or maybe wait and see if he could actually finish a year healthy, and then they do it 24 hours later. So Definitely well-deserved. Like, he's played so well this year. Even if he wasn't playing this well as a corner, like, he's an all-pro punt returner. You can see him absolutely take over games like he did in that Carolina game. But now he's also playing great cornerback skills. And we always knew he was sticky in man-to-man, but you're really seeing some better ball skills, like that Buffalo game, the interception, the pass breakup on Keon Coleman. Like, he's been exceptional. And he was the big kind of free agent they had to re-sign internally and to do it before he gets to the open market, where he probably could have gotten more. Like, he might have been able to reset that nickel corner spot. Like, again, I just think that's a really good piece of business to get that one done.
And you mentioned what's coming up. I mean, it's not they have nobody, the big names. It's a lot of guys they signed to 1-year deals this past offseason. Tonga, Hawkins, and Hooper are the big ones. But, you get out from that Duggar contract, you pay those guys. They're going to have some real flexibility this offseason. They're setting themselves up for that, and getting this deal done now, it's just one less thing you got to do, because we've heard stories about how this works, right? You're on the phone. There's two guys you want to keep. You're on the phone with one of them. While you're on the phone trying to get one deal done, the other guy goes elsewhere. And, all right, well, this money's set aside because we got to get this guy. And then suddenly he goes, but you had the money set aside for another guy. So it's just like, you want that to-do list to be as short as possible, hitting that, whatever that Monday is in March, where the tampering window opens. You want to have a very short to-do list at that point in terms of your own players. And he was going to be the biggest, require the most attention, require the most detail. And they got that box checked here on October 28th. Good business.
Absolutely. And Mike points out in the chat, going to be an expensive secondary because they can sign Christian Gonzalez to an extension as well.
Yep, but they can play some.
But what?
But they can play. It's a good second. Like, they should get their money's worth.
Exactly. So they will probably need to hit on at least like a mid-round corner at some point, because you figure if you have Jones and Gonzalez locked in longer term, you can get out of Davis probably after next year. You'll probably need some youth on a rookie contract in that room at some point there. But it's 3 very talented corners. They're all having very good years, coming off great games against the Browns. So good piece of business, and very well deserved again for Marcus Jones to get that deal and get locked in there. So any last thoughts? 3 deals, 3 moves, big Tuesday.
There's more to come. They're going to do something else. They have the open roster spots. We'll just see what it is, and it'll be interesting to hear what Vrabel says tomorrow.
Exactly. So we'll be back Thursday to preview the Atlanta Falcons, of course, and maybe get into a little bit more some trade target specifics. We won't go on for 10 minutes on kick returners. Just classic Tuesday night talk right there with kick returner talk.
I'm standing by it. It's a real need. It's a real need, and
I agree
nobody else is talking about it.
I think they could use an upgrade there. It's just people were complaining that we were talking about kick returners, which
were they? Do you know what show this is?
Yeah, like you know what you sign up for when you
right.
come here. But all right, so make sure everyone's locked on to Patriots Press Pass, like and subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications so you know when we have to go live for maybe some other emergency podcast coming up, or just on Thursday to talk about the Atlanta Falcons as well. And if you're on audio only, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast there. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else you can do that. We would greatly appreciate that. And you can also follow Barth on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Head over to 985thesportshub.com for his Patriots coverage there. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com for our Patriots coverage online there as well. So thanks everyone for jumping on with us tonight. Have a great rest of your night, and we will see you guys later this week.